Warning in the mirror. The stadium erupted with energy, filled with thousands of cheering, shouting, and clapping fans. It was Nana's first time attending a live football match with her dad, and she was beyond excited watching the game, enjoying popcorn, even though she didn't fully understand the match. Nana finished a large cup of Pepsi and started feeling a tingling sensation in her stomach. She thought she needed to use the restroom. Since the restroom was nearby, she decided to tell her dad she'd go by herself and be back soon. The hallway was now eerily silent and empty. Nana's footsteps echoed against the tiled floor as she approached the women's restroom at the end of the corridor. Just as she reached for the door, a voice.
Nana.
She froze. That voice. It sounded just like her mother's. She turned toward the flickering light of the narrow passage. There, standing in the dim shadows, was a woman.
Mom? Is that you?
Nana couldn't see her face clearly enough to be sure. The woman, eerily resembling Nana's mother, insisted on taking her to a cleaner restroom at the end of the hallway. Despite her confusion, Nana felt an inexplicable pull and followed the mysterious woman. The woman walked ahead of her. The flickering lights of the corridor briefly revealed glimpses of her. She wore a long white silk blouse, stained with dark patches. Her hands and legs bore scratches. She led Nana to a small white door, opening it to reveal an old, dimly lit restroom. The mirror on the wall caught Nana's attention. It felt strange. In the dim, flickering light, she saw her mother's face, pale, ghostly skin, eyes wide like an owl, and a chilling smile as Nana stood before the mirror. Feeling uneasy, Nana turned and said,
Mom, can you wait outside? I can't go if you're staring at me like that.
The woman assured Nana she would wait and that she had a surprise for her, then immediately shut the door. Nana hesitated but nodded before stepping toward the sink. But when she glanced back at the mirror, her stomach dropped. Her reflection was no longer her own. Instead, Nana saw a terrifying girl about her age, with deep black eyes and an unnaturally wide mouth. Then, the girl's mouth slowly closed, and she spoke to Nana, warning her to leave. She told Nana that the woman outside was not her mother, and urged her to find her father. If she didn't, Nana would meet the same fate as her. Nana wanted to move, but she was frozen with fear as she heard her mother's voice from outside the restroom door, urging her to come out. The girl's eyes wept black ink like liquid, her sobs echoing. She continued warning Nana, telling her that the woman outside was a deranged murderer. The woman outside banged violently on the door. Nana felt trapped, her mind torn between the two opposing voices. The doorknob twisted forcefully, but just in time, Nana lunged forward and locked the door from the inside as the woman outside tried to force it open. Nana collapsed onto the floor, covering her ears and sobbing, "Stop it."
Stop it! Please stop! Dad, help me!
And then, she didn't know when she lost consciousness. The sound of machines filled the air as Nana woke up in a hospital. Her father sat beside her, his face pale and trembling. Her father recounted that after realizing Nana had been gone too long, he searched for her with the security team and found her lying on the floor of an abandoned restroom. After reporting it to the stadium management, they uncovered a horrifying truth. A year ago, a mentally ill woman had taken her daughter's life in that very restroom before ending her own. Though shaken, Nana felt grateful that the trapped spirit of the little girl in the mirror had tried to save her from the same fate. Both she and her father prayed that the ghostly girl who saved Nana could now finally rest in peace. The final warnings. Alan and his wife Cheryl had lived in that house for many years. It was his childhood home, a place filled with memories. But after his mother passed away, something changed. The walls whispered, doors opened on their own, and an unnatural chill settled in even during the summer. Alan and Cheryl weren't the only ones who noticed. Their daughter would wake up screaming, saying that a woman stood at the foot of her bed, humming a strange lullaby. He convinced himself that it was her, that she had stayed behind to watch over them. But if that were true, why did the house feel so wrong? As if it was warning them of something. Then, things got worse. Sometimes, objects flew off the shelves, smashing against the walls, turning the house into something dangerous. They couldn't take it anymore. They made the difficult decision to sell the house. They sold it to a young woman named Reilly. She loved its antique charm and was excited to make it her own. Cheryl handed over the keys, relieved to leave the past behind. But perhaps the house wasn't ready to let them go. The first few nights were peaceful. Then, the strange things began. Reilly would hear footsteps at night, even when she was certain she was alone. Doors she had locked would swing open at midnight, leaving her sleepless for days. The longer she stayed, the stronger the feeling of being watched grew. The air felt heavy, suffocating, as if something unseen was hovering over her shoulder. And then, the nightmares began. A woman stood in the darkness of her room, her face obscured, lips moving as if whispering something. A lullaby. Then she screamed, "Bring them back." Reilly woke up gasping, cold sweat dripping down her skin. She knew she couldn't handle this alone. Desperate for answers, Reilly reached out to Alan and Cheryl, begging them to come back and help her. They didn't want to return, but deep down they knew this wasn't over. That night, they drove back. The three of them gathered, and Alan and Cheryl sat before an old Ouija board in the living room, an ancient tool used to communicate with the dead. "Who are you?" The board slowly revealed the letters, Mother. Alan felt a wave of relief. "Mom, it's me, Alan. Why are you still here?" The board spelled out promise. Alan remembered a conversation before his mother passed away. She had been terrified of something. She had once told him, "If I die here, don't let the house be abandoned. If no one lives here, it will wake up." Reilly realized that the house had never been haunted by Alan's mother. She had been keeping something else trapped, preventing it from escaping. But they still didn't know what she had been protecting them from. Reilly recalled seeing a strange basement in the house. She went there and discovered a hidden passage, locked away for decades. The moment they opened the basement, chaos erupted. Screams echoed from the walls. Furniture flew across the room. The Ouija board shattered on the floor. A loud explosion shook the room. Lights flickered violently. The walls groaned as if they were about to collapse. Then, a voice rang out not from the board, but from the darkness, his mother's voice, begging them to seal the passage. The entity grabbed Alan, trying to drag him into the darkness. Reilly and Cheryl, desperate, saw a book fly toward them from nowhere. Alan's mother screamed, telling them to recite the prayer to push the entity back. Alan rushed forward, and they began sealing it shut. But then his mother told them they had to burn it. Alan hesitated. Burning. It meant destroying everything. Every memory of his mother in this house. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, telling him to let it go. She had spent decades protecting him from this thing. And so, he made his choice. He set it on fire. As the flames spread, Alan's mother appeared one last time.
"Thank you, my son."
For the first time in years, she looked at peace. Then she vanished. The three of them barely escaped as the house collapsed behind them. After that, Alan decided not to rebuild the house. Years passed, and the once beautiful home rotted away, sealed forever. Betrayal in the dark. It was a quiet night in late October. Maya was patrolling the empty streets of a small Texas town. The air carried a heavy, eerie stillness as the early morning hours approached. But that night, at around 2:15 a.m., the radio crackled to life. Maya received a call. Maya picked up the radio, and a woman's voice came through on the other end.
"Police, please. I think there's someone in my house."
Maya could hear the woman's frantic, shallow breathing. But just as she was about to respond, the line went dead. She tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. Maya radioed a colleague to get the location. She stopped, squinting at her GPS. It was just a few blocks away, near the town's edge. Something about the woman's voice unsettled her, so she decided to check it out. Maya arrived at the location, but there was nothing, just an empty lot. The wind whistled softly, rustling through the tall, dry grass. She checked her GPS again. The location was correct, but there was no house, just emptiness. In the distance, a faint light flickered on the porch of an old farmhouse. Maya felt an odd pull toward it. She decided to walk to the farmhouse, thinking maybe they knew something. She parked and approached the door. Maya knocked, and after a few minutes, the door creaked open. A young man answered, looking tired, confused, and not at all like someone who had made a frantic emergency call.
"Can I help you, officer?"
he asked, squinting at Maya through the dim porch light. She explained the call, asking if he had seen or heard anything unusual. He shook his head, confusion plain on his face. She asked if he knew anyone else living nearby. The man slowly shook his head.
"No, there haven't been any houses for miles."
Maya thanked him and returned to her car, a deep unease settling in her stomach. Maya checked her radio again and tried calling the number one more time, but it still went straight to voicemail. She decided to head back to the station, but as Maya turned the key in the ignition, something caught her eye in the rearview mirror. Someone was sitting in the backseat. She could only see a faint silhouette, a hunched figure barely visible in the darkness. Maya's heart pounded as she tried to stay calm, reaching for her radio to call for backup. But before she could, a sharp blow struck the back of her head. Pain exploded. Her vision and everything around her faded into darkness. Maya woke up groggy, her head throbbing. Her hands were tied, and the air smelled of damp wood and rust. A single light bulb swung overhead, casting long, jagged shadows. Then, Maya saw her. It was her colleague, Jeff. Her face twisted into a manic grin, her eyes gleaming with cruelty.
You didn't expect to see me, did you? I've been waiting for this.
She continued, pacing with a gleaming knife in hand.
Do you know how long I had to smile? While everyone adored you, Maya.
While I was stuck dealing with scraps, she lunged, pressing the blade close to Maya's face, taunting her about always being so calm. She wanted to see just how calm Maya would stay now. The cuts weren't deep, but they stung. Blood trickled down Maya's skin as Jeff mocked her, savoring every moment. Maya waited, biding her time. Jeff's grip on the knife loosened slightly as she got lost in her own rage. When she leaned in too close, Maya struck. She kicked Jeff's shin with all her strength, making her stumble. Maya's hands were still tied, but she used her shoulder to slam Jeff into the wall. The knife clattered to the floor. Jeff was dazed, giving Maya just enough time to grab it.
I feel sorry for you, Jeff.
Then, Maya bolted. Behind her, Jeff staggered out, screaming Maya's name, but her voice grew fainter as Maya sprinted toward her patrol car. Maya stumbled into the police station, covered in blood but alive. Her colleagues rushed toward her, their faces a mix of shock and concern. Maya told them everything. Jeff was arrested. She sat calmly, as if nothing had happened, but her eyes still carried pure malice. A few weeks later, Maya drove past the place where it all began. But now, she understood. Sometimes the monsters we fear don't hide in the darkness. They stand right beside us, wearing friendly faces. The lurking in the middle of the night. This happened to Joy when she was in college. Joy lived alone in her dorm, and it was just an ordinary day like any other. After class, she decided to stop by the nearest grocery store to pick up a few things before heading home. As she walked through the aisles, browsing items, she noticed a strange man lurking in one of them. He was a man with bloodshot eyes and tattered clothes, staring at her from a distance with a strange, unsettling grin. As she continued shopping, She couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her. Joy tried to ignore it and quickly grabbed what she needed before heading to the checkout. But as she reached the checkout, she felt his breath on her neck. He leaned in close and whispered something in her ear, something she couldn't quite make out. Joy quickly paid for her items and rushed to her car in the parking lot. As Joy was about to get into her car, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw it was him. He had come from the store and was now charging toward her, a knife in his hand. Joy threw herself into her car, locking the doors just in time, escaping by mere seconds. He stood outside, pounding on the window, shouting obscenities, but she sped off and called the police once she was safe. The police searched the area, but couldn't find the man. Joy was terrified and couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, watching her. One night, a violent storm rolled in. Joy struggled to sleep and woke up around 5 or 6 a.m., startled by a particularly loud clap of thunder that shook the house. Then, she noticed a strange shadow. As lightning flashed, she saw the silhouette of a man standing outside her window. His face pressed against the glass, staring at her. It was him, the man from the store. Joy froze in terror. In his hand, he clutched a knife, his gaze fixed on her. With each flash of lightning, the man appeared closer until, suddenly, he vanished along with the storm. Panicked, Joy rushed to check that all the doors were locked. But when she turned back, she saw the man standing in her living room. His terrifying grin widened as he pointed the knife at her and lunged forward, screaming, "You're mine, you're mine." Joy collapsed to the floor, paralyzed with fear, as he climbed on top of her, the blade of his knife slicing through her clothes. Just when she thought it was over, a loud crash echoed through the room, and she saw him collapse to the floor. Then, Joy saw her neighbor. He had tackled the man, pinning him down and punching him repeatedly until he was unconscious. A wave of relief washed over Joy. She asked her neighbor how he knew she was in danger. He explained that while going to his kitchen for a drink of water, he saw the man lurking around the building through his window. Sensing something was wrong, he decided to watch from a distance to see what would happen. The man was arrested. He had just been released after serving 30 years in prison for attempted murder and assault. The entire ordeal left her traumatized, and for months, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Joy continued to have nightmares about the man who had nearly taken her life that night. If it weren't for her neighbor, things could have ended very differently. Elevator and warning from the 9th aisle floor. Michael was invited for an interview at a building, hoping this would be a fresh opportunity for him. But before he stepped into the elevator, he encountered something strange. A strange man, seemingly a security guard, stopped him and sternly warned,
"Don't get off the elevator until it reaches the 9th floor,"
he said in an odd tone, completely devoid of humor. There was something in his voice that sent chills down Michael's spine, as though he was hinting at something unseen.
"Don't do anything foolish,"
he added before walking away. Michael stood frozen for a moment, convincing himself it was just an absurd warning, yet he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at him. Michael stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 9th floor. A soft chime echoed in the elevator, announcing each floor through the intercom, as if trying to ease his tension. When the elevator stopped at the 5th floor, Michael sensed something unusual. The sliding doors revealed a receptionist sitting at a desk. She looked at him and smiled warmly.
Good morning, Michael.
She greeted, leaving Michael stunned. What surprised him was the way she addressed him, as though she had known him for a long time, even though they had never met before. She spoke about his personal life, even recounting intimate details Michael had never shared with anyone. Leaning forward, she added,
We know everything.
and then smiled in a cryptic way. The doors closed before he could respond, and the elevator shuddered as it ascended. When the elevator reached the 11th floor, The doors opened, and an elderly woman stepped inside. She glanced at Michael, then turned back to stare at the elevator buttons. She said firmly.
I want to go to the second floor.
However, Michael objected, advising her against going there.
Nonsense.
Pressing the button for the second floor herself. When the elevator doors opened, it revealed what looked like a decayed, damp cave with slick walls oozing black water that seemed alive. The faint flickering lights only added to the eerie atmosphere. Michael stepped back, avoiding eye contact with the woman, but she was unfazed, stepping out as though this was where she belonged. Then she turned back, smiled, and asked,
Aren't you coming?
Michael panicked, frantically pressing the close button on the elevator. The woman slowly walked into the darkness, as if vanishing into thin air. But things did not end there. As the doors were about to close, a shadowy figure suddenly appeared, stopping the elevator doors with a bony hand. It was a man in a black suit with glowing red eyes.
Where are you rushing off to?
Michael stepped back, trying to maintain distance.
I'm not planning to get off on this floor. I'm heading to the 9th floor.
Then the man spoke about offering him a lucrative deal if he stayed. Michael frowned, his instincts warning him that this was far from good.
I don't need anything from you.
Oh, but I think you'll change your mind,
The man said, stepping closer.
Trade your eyes for eternal peace. You won't have to see any horrors again. A life free from pain, free from fear.
Michael froze as he stared into the man's cold gaze and realized that he had no eyes, just deep, empty black sockets. Michael felt a fog enveloping his mind, and before he realized it, he was stepping forward. But just as his hand was about to touch, a sound echoed from afar, snapping Michael back to reality.
No, I don't want that. I'll face it on my own.
The man's demeanor changed suddenly. His smile disappeared, replaced by a cold, sharp glare. He moved quickly toward Michael, arms outstretched, as if to pull him out of the elevator. The man grabbed his collar, yanking him off balance. Michael felt his foot slip off the edge of the elevator, stepping halfway into the dark void of the second floor. Michael grabbed the elevator railing and used all his strength to pull himself back. The man lost his balance and let go. Without wasting a second, Michael slammed the closed door button. The elevator doors slowly shut, leaving the man standing in the darkness with a twisted smile.
You can't run forever, Michael.
The elevator continued to ascend. The buttons for the lower floors gradually disappeared from the control panel. He tried pressing a button, but the elevator did not respond. Then the TV screen switched to live footage of Michael, lying on the elevator floor, wearing a strange and unsettling smile. In panic, the elevator filled with a distorted version of the song Happy Birthday. When the elevator suddenly stopped at the 9th floor, the doors opened to reveal what seemed to be a normal reception area. Michael hesitated. The warmth of the room seemed to beckon him, but something about it felt too perfect. Then she stood there, pressing something that resembled a control panel, before vanishing in the blink of an eye. At that moment, he began to realize that he had stepped into an invisible labyrinth. Everything around him became hazy, and the scene seemed to unfold in an endless loop. The elevator descended to the first floor where he had entered. As he stepped out, he felt a brief sense of relief, only to witness someone else stepping into the elevator. As the doors closed, Michael instinctively warned the woman.
Don't step out until you reach the 9th floor.
The door shut, and the elevator began its ascent once again. The terrifying escape. Jack and Jill were a young couple who had just gotten married. After a whirlwind wedding, they set off for their honeymoon on a remote island. Jack, Jill's husband, planned a trip to a secluded cabin, hoping to escape the pressures of their everyday lives. When they arrived on the island, Jill began to feel uneasy about the isolation, but Jack reassured her that it would be a relaxing getaway. They crossed the lake to the cabin. Jill noticed something odd. 4 portraits of women hanging on the wall near the fireplace, but she didn't think much of it. Soon, Jill realized the island lacked amenities. In fact, there was no cell phone signal at all. Despite this, Jack seemed unusually at ease, encouraging her to embrace the simplicity of nature. The next morning, Jill woke up to find that Jack had locked their car keys and money in a small safe. Jack wore the safe's key on a necklace. When Jill asked, Jack explained it was for safety so they wouldn't lose anything. It seemed harmless, but Jill couldn't shake the strange feeling gnawing at her. She tried to push it aside and enjoy nature. Days passed, and although Jack tried to keep her entertained with hikes and boat rides, Jill felt increasingly uneasy. Jill confronted Jack again, expressing her desire to leave the island. However, Jack seemed uninterested. Instead, he avoided the topic and spent his time setting animal traps and engaging in strange activities. One evening, Jill finally had enough and insisted on leaving, but Jack's response was cold. He became aggressive, saying,
"We're not leaving. Not yet."
Jill's fear grew as Jack's attitude completely changed. He became increasingly paranoid, and his eyes gleamed with an unusual red hue. He grabbed a knife from the kitchen and lunged at her. In a panic, she ran out of the cabin and grabbed a log. She struck him hard on the head. He collapsed, stunned but still alive. She quickly grabbed the key from around his neck and ran. She ran toward the boat, hearing Jack's shouts in the distance.
"Jill!"
He was swimming after her. Her hands trembled as she tried to row faster, but fear and exhaustion slowed her down. As she reached the shore, she stumbled over something. Looking down, she saw 4 separate graves, the earth freshly turned. Her breath caught. With no time to think, Jill dashed toward the car, but it wouldn't start. Jack was now at the window, yelling for her to get out. In a desperate attempt to escape, Jill grabbed a gun from the car's glove compartment and pointed it at Jack. However, Jack tricked her, and as she tried to fix the car, he smashed the window with a rock, knocking her unconscious. Jill woke up to find herself tied to a tree. Jack stood over her, cold and crazed, repeating,
"You're just like the others."
Jill struggled to understand and asked,
What others?
That's when Jack revealed the horrifying truth. He had 4 wives before, all of whom tried to leave, and he had killed them. Jill was next. Realizing she was in grave danger, Jill had to find a way to free herself. But when she realized that he was no longer in sight, she rubbed the rope against a sharp stone nearby to slowly escape. As Jack approached with an axe, she rushed into the cabin, grabbed the gun, and ordered him to stop. Jack ignored her warning and charged at her with the axe raised. In a split second, Jill pulled the trigger, grazing Jack and injuring him. Jack fell to the ground, unable to move. She threw the gun aside, tears streaming down her face.
I trusted you.
Then she ran out of the cabin toward the boat. She was halfway across the lake when she heard a deafening explosion from the island. Jill turned to see the cabin ablaze. Her heart sank, but she kept rowing away. She went to the authorities, who launched an investigation and eventually found Jack's body washed ashore. The island was now sealed off. Jill stood by the lake, gazing at the now abandoned cabin. Thankfully, the nightmare had finally ended. The mysterious curse of donuts. Moving into a new house is always unsettling. John and his wife, Lisa, had just moved into an old house next to an abandoned Dunkin' Donuts, left in ruins nearly a decade ago. They had no idea the house harbored such a dark history. The fire had destroyed the building, leaving behind charred ruins and rumors of hauntings, which gave the area an eerie reputation. However, they never believed in such tales. At first, they enjoyed their new home and gradually adjusted to the quiet neighborhood. However, things quickly turned strange when a mysterious box of donuts began appearing on their doorstep every morning. It was a plain cardboard box, unmarked and without any notes, containing a dozen perfectly arranged donuts. John was suspicious, thinking it was some kind of prank, but Lisa, on the other hand, was delighted. She loved sweets, especially donuts. He brought the box inside, and Lisa eagerly opened it.
Look, they're fresh.
She exclaimed. He frowned.
I don't know. This seems a little strange.
John felt uneasy trusting food from strangers. Despite Lisa's claims that he was overreacting, John threw the donuts away. He didn't want to take any risks, but the next morning it was back. Another box of donuts. He threw it away again, but the pattern continued. A few days later, a new neighbor moved in and brought them a box of donuts as a gift. John's instincts told him something was off, given the recent events. He gave a weak smile, took it inside, and threw it away. But one day when John came home, he found her eating a donut from the box. She dismissed his concerns with a weak laugh, saying,
It's just a donut.
That night, however, things took a disturbing turn. John woke to the sound of 3 knocks on the window, followed by 2 more. Then it intensified as he heard footsteps in the hallway and a strange bell ringing. It was a soft chime, like a hotel bell ringing. When John asked Lisa if she heard it, she mumbled in her sleep, turning her back to him. Over the next few days, the noises became more frequent. The knocks, footsteps, and bells. They felt like they were living in a nightmare. Lisa began acting strangely, growing distant and staring at the wall. One night, John found her standing completely still in the kitchen.
Lisa, what are you doing?
He asked, but she didn't reply. Suddenly, the same bell rang, and before he could react, she turned to him with a vacant stare and lunged at him with a knife in her hand. John narrowly dodged the knife, staggering backward. He escaped death by a hair's breadth, but Lisa's behavior grew increasingly erratic. Then she charged at him, as though possessed by madness. She began chasing John through the house, as if something was controlling her every move. However, as John reached the front door and flung it open, Lisa suddenly stopped. Her head jerked to one side, her neck twisting unnaturally as she stared at the abandoned Dunkin' Donuts building.
Lisa?
John called out, desperate.
What's happening to you?
But she didn't reply. She just began walking toward the ruins, her steps slow and deliberate. John followed her, keeping a safe distance. The neighbors began stepping out of their homes, drawn by the commotion. An elderly man approached John, his face pale and filled with confusion. He warned John that the building had a dark history. It had burned down 10 years ago, killing 6 people inside. He said, rumors claimed the place was cursed, though no one knew the full story. John looked at Lisa, who continued walking toward the burned ruins, oblivious to everything around her. The entrance was nothing but rubble and charred remains. She stepped inside and headed straight for the old counter. Fearful, John followed her, unable to leave her alone. Lisa bent down and picked something up from the debris. It was a tarnished desk bell, identical to the one John had heard in their house. Lisa placed it on an old countertop and began ringing it repeatedly, as if entranced. The sound echoed through the ruined building, sending a chilling wave through him. Not knowing what else to do, he shakily called the police. When the police arrived, Lisa was still standing there, her face void of expression, ringing the bell like a madwoman. They sedated her and took her away. They admitted her to a mental health facility, but she hasn't responded since. 2 years have passed, and Lisa still hasn't opened her eyes. John can't shake the feeling that the donuts somehow caused all of this. He wishes she had never eaten those donuts that